It is that time of the week on our show where we check in on our nation's capital and mind Ottawa's business with the Blacklocks reporter, the only reporter owned and operated newsroom covering our nation's capital. And Tom Korski is the managing editor there who joins us for these chats every Wednesday morning just after the 10 o'clock news. Mr. Korski, good morning.
Morning, Mike.
Our finance minister is promising we're going to get our financial house in order when it comes to spending. Should I take comfort in these words, Tom?
Well, they are, as Jagmeet Singh of the New Democrats used to say, they are pretty words. But the Senate National Finance Committee was not impressed because they looked at the record. The finance minister said there has to be some discipline restored to federal financing, though he was there for the last 10 years where there were constantly, they rarely, in fact, I'm trying to think of a time in 10 years when they met a deficit target, and some of the misses were spectacular. Let's see. Last year, they projected a $27 billion deficit, came in at $78 billion. Shocking, said one budget officer at the time. Year before that, they projected the $40 billion deficit, came in at 52, so about 30% higher. This year, they had projected $31 billion, and the current estimate is double that, $65 billion. So there was a senator, Elizabeth Marshall, she is a former provincial auditor from Newfoundland and Labrador, said, you have no credibility, your debt's exploding, what's the plan? They didn't get a plan, but Mike, everyone's watching this. You know, their internal polling shows that the deficit is not high on Canadians' radar when it comes to pressing issues. Fair enough. But anyone who's been around this town more than 20 minutes knows that that's the sort of thing that can really bite you and hurt very, very badly, and it always does. It always ends the same way.
Who needs fiscal guardrails anyway, Tom?
Honestly, we're 19 years without a balanced budget. And that's getting long in the tooth. That's not a good sign.
It certainly isn't. Maybe a parliamentary budget officer will help. You and I talked about this last week, and it seemed as though the office would not be held again, but that's been overturned, and the parliamentary budget officer will be reinstated?
Well, there is a new nominee named. Her name is Mrs. Ryan, the former Associate Assistant Deputy Finance Minister, not a public figure, not a household name, but there is a coalition of MPs, and it's not just Conservatives, include some Bloc members, who said, game on. The Cabinet really essentially fired the last budget officer because he made life difficult for them. His name was Jason Jakes, and he described federal overspending, which we just discussed, as stupefying, unsustainable, very reckless. He went on and on, Cabinet not like, so they got rid of him when his contract came up. And just last night, the Commons Government Operations Committee voted to reinstate the man that Cabinet dismissed. So that sends a message, and the message is that's enough from you. So everything is going to be a big fight now. This office has really been politicized now, Mike. It's going to get hot.
Okay, let's stay on the dollars and cents for just another moment here, Tom, because, again, something else we've talked about before, and I think Canadians generally understand. When we say, as a nation, as a federal government, we are going to meet that NATO spending target on defense of 2%. It's a pretty big number, and how are we going to get there? I guess we have a little bit of the detail as to how?
Through access to information. It is not gonna it's not gonna cheer you up, Mike. What did they do? We can see through access to information, the Department of Defense turned this into kind of a game of three-card Monte at the county fair. They started coming up with different ways for creative accounting to meet their 2% target for military preparedness, spending on national defense, the minimum NATO requirement. Well, they didn't meet the minimum NATO requirement. They missed it by several billions. But the figures they came up with were highly entertaining. My favorite was they included $200,000 for landscaping at Army bases for tree planting. They were going to plant some bushes at Camp Shiloh, and they were going to include that in their national defense budget. They also included pensions for civilian employees of the Coast Guard. Never included that before. What also went into the NATO hopper? They scraped that $3 million grant for upgrading a water treatment plant in Saguenay, Quebec. You may say, how will that keep the Russians at bay? But it became an accounting. It became creative accounting, Mike.
Oh, yeah. So submarines, fighter jets, that's okay. We have nice landscaped areas around our military bases. There you go.
Literally counted trees. The defense minister counted the trees. He did.
Okay, a couple of more interconnected items here I wanted to talk to you about because, boy, oh boy, it's an interesting time to be doing the kind of work that we do, especially you with Blacklock's reporter. And we'll start with Travis Donraj, who claims, he's a former journalist, had worked at the CBC for a while, if I'm not mistaken. He claims there are dozens of public figures who are banned from being interviewed.
Spectacular testimony at the Commons Heritage Committee, Mike. He did, Mr. Donraj used to host a program on their all-news channel until he was constructively dismissed, demoted, he left. He's currently in litigation with the network. MPs fell silent as Mr. Donraj testified that there is an active blacklist. This is almost Nixonian, but he said it. There's an active blacklist. There's a guide called Parameters for Political Guests on who shall and who shall not be allowed on the air, and an active blacklist, he said, of 45 individuals by name that are forbidden from ever being interviewed. MPs, especially the opposition caucus, said, do tell, would you be prepared to table that for the committee's benefit? And Mr. Donraj replied, yes, I will. Everyone wants to see the Nixon enemies list that is active at the CBC. It was really something, Mike.
And yet he hasn't tabled it yet, right?
Well, he has to table it, then it has to be translated into both official languages, trust me. This is coming out. They would love to keep this a secret. We asked the CBC for the guide and the list. You can imagine their response. This is coming. There's no way this is keeping secret.
I cannot wait to see who is on that list.
Okay. Dandy.
It will be. Okay, so you asked the CBC to see this list. It's not the only time, though, Tom, that you and the Blacklock's reporter have issued a request for interview and been denied. Little bit of trouble getting interviews requests returned these days, Mr. Korski?
We've been blacklisted for years. The Bank of Canada won't take our questions. Department of Immigration, I can't remember that. But what's new is, and startling, is God bless them, the Department of Immigration actually put this in writing. This is the thing about the CBC blacklist. Everyone knows there's blacklisting, but most people are smart enough not to put it in writing. Not so the Department of Immigration. They not only put this in black and white, they put it on a website on who they will take questions from and who they will not. And if you do not meet government criteria that is applied to newsrooms that seek federal subsidies, no question for you, my little friend. Can you believe that?
No.
I was shocked, and we asked them for comment, and they didn't have any comment because we never applied for subsidies.
See, the thing is, though, Tom, even absent their comment, that story is still going to be published.
Of course it will, and we've explained this to them. You say, look, let's just talk about the trade. When we have an access to information report, I have had to explain this to a couple of government functionaries, some of the slower ones over the years. So we're going to publish the story anyway. I don't need you to translate it for me. If you don't choose to comment, then the story says you didn't comment. So it's not obvious to me why this is not a completely counterintuitive policy for a department. But that is what we're getting down to in Ottawa. We have the white list, and you're the good boys, especially the ones who take the subsidies, and we have the blacklist. Imagine, Mike, this is now normalized in Ottawa in 2026 on the CBC. White lists, blacklists. Unbelievable.
I fear it's not contained to just the nation's capital. It will spread.
Oh, man.
Tom, keep up the great work. Always appreciate the chats.
Thank you, Mike.
Tom Korski is the managing editor at the Blacklock's Reporter, the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom covering our nation's capital. You can find it online, blacklocks.ca. Very interesting stuff there and well worth your subscription.